Stoicism is often mistaken for emotional toughness. In truth, it is emotional containment, the ability to feel fully without being pulled off course. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Because the modern world does not defeat us through hardship. It defeats us through constant, low-grade pressure, tiny demands, endless signals, quiet anxieties that never quite resolve. Kaizen understood this centuries ago. Progress does not arrive through force, intensity, or motivation. It arrives through controlled, almost unnoticeable adjustment. Now, place that restraint inside extreme minimalism. Not as an aesthetic, not as deprivation, but as a system that removes friction from thought itself. What emerges is not hustle, not discipline, not productivity for its own sake. It is a form of continuous improvement without stress. Growth that does not announce itself. Progress that feels so natural, it almost goes unnoticed. Until one day, you realize you are no longer struggling at all. And that is where Kaizen Stoicism begins. Most systems of personal development demand something from you. More effort, more discipline, more motivation. They assume the problem is a lack of intensity. Stoicism never made that mistake. Stoic philosophy observed something far more unsettling. That human beings rarely fail because they are weak, but because their attention is constantly being pulled apart. Kaizen reached the same conclusion from a different direction. When progress depends on enthusiasm, it collapses. When it depends on small, repeatable alignment, it compounds. Extreme minimalism is where these two meet, not as a lifestyle choice, but as a pressure reduction system. By removing excess decision-making, excess desire, excess noise, the mind regains a rare capacity, the ability to move forward without internal resistance. This is why extreme minimalists often progress quietly, without motivation rituals, without dramatic breakthroughs. Their environment no longer fights their philosophy. Kaizen Stoicism is not about doing more. It is about making progress inevitable by designing life. So improvement requires less willpower than staying the same. And once that structure is in place, growth stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like gravity. The modern struggle is not confusion. It is overexposure. Most people are not unclear about what matters. They are buried beneath too many signals telling them what should matter. Every day, the mind is asked to decide what to read, what to want, what to optimize, what to fix, what to become. This constant decision-making creates a subtle but dangerous condition. Decision fatigue disguised as ambition. People believe they are unmotivated, when in reality, their nervous system is simply saturated. Stoicism warned about this long before modern life existed. It observed that when externals dominate attention, the inner faculty of judgment weakens. Not dramatically, gradually. And that gradual weakening is why progress feels exhausting. Kaizen exposes another uncomfortable truth. Large goals are not intimidating because they are difficult. They are intimidating because they require sustained psychological clarity. And clarity is precisely what modern environments destroy. Extreme minimalism becomes relevant here not as a reaction, but as a diagnosis. Most lives today are structurally misaligned with improvement. The environment demands novelty. The mind craves stability. The result is internal friction that never resolves. This is why people cycle endlessly between motivation and burnout. Why they consume books, videos, systems, yet feel unchanged. Why even meaningful goals feel heavy. They are attempting to grow in environments that constantly pull attention outward, reward urgency over depth, and mistake stimulation for progress. Stoicism called this slavery to externals. Not chains, but dependencies. Kaizen reveals the consequence. Progress cannot compound in unstable conditions. Extreme minimalists sense this intuitively. They remove not just objects, but micro-distractions, unnecessary commitments, false urgency. Yet even here, many misunderstand the challenge. Minimalism alone does not guarantee progress. Without philosophical restraint, it becomes aesthetic control. Without Kaizen, it becomes static simplicity. The true problem is not clutter, not stress, not lack of discipline. It is that most people are trying to improve, inside systems that quietly resist improvement. Until that resistance is addressed, every method feels heavier than it should, and this is the silent obstacle Kaizen Stoicism was designed to dissolve. Kaizen Stoicism does not ask how to improve faster. It asks a more uncomfortable question. Why does improvement require so much force in the first place? Stoicism begins by isolating a single faculty, judgment. Not emotion, not desire. Judgment. Everything else follows from how accurately the mind interprets events. When judgment is overloaded, progress slows. When judgment is stable, progress becomes automatic. Kaizen approaches the same problem from a different angle. It assumes the human mind cannot reliably sustain intensity, but it can sustain direction if friction is low enough. Extreme minimalism is the environment where this becomes visible. When possessions, commitments, and inputs are reduced, something unexpected happens. The mind regains temporal depth. Time stops feeling fragmented. Actions stop competing with one another. Small improvements no longer feel insignificant. This is why extreme minimalists often advance quietly. Their system rewards consistency, not enthusiasm. Kaizen Stoicism operates through microalignment. Instead of asking, "What should I add to improve my life?" it asks, "What is currently making improvement heavier than it needs to be?" This shift is subtle but decisive. Stoicism teaches voluntary discomfort, not as punishment, but as calibration. When you remove excess, the nervous system recalibrates what is necessary. Desire becomes quieter. Attention becomes sharper. Progress becomes less theatrical. Kaizen then enters not as ambition, but as maintenance of alignment. A fractionally better choice. A slightly cleaner signal. A marginal reduction in resistance. Most people dismiss these changes because they don't feel transformative. But transformation is not how systems evolve. They evolve through compounding absence of friction. Extreme minimalism accelerates this by limiting inputs. Less information, fewer decisions, reduced exposure to artificial urgency. This creates a rare condition. The mind is no longer reacting, it is governing. Stoicism warned that reaction is the enemy of freedom. Kaizen demonstrates that reaction is also the enemy of improvement. When reactions dominate, progress resets daily. When restraint governs, progress accumulates invisibly. This is why Kaizen Stoicism does not require motivation. Motivation is a response to resistance. Remove resistance, and motivation becomes irrelevant. Extreme minimalists often discover this accidentally. They simplify to feel calm, but end up becoming unstoppable, not because they work harder, but because fewer things interfere. The system is quiet. The signal is clean. Small actions land exactly where they should. Kaizen Stoicism is not a method you perform. It is a condition you construct. And once constructed, improvement happens. With the same certainty, that water flows downhill. The breakthrough comes quietly, not as a realization, but as a reversal. At some point, the Kaizen Stoic stops asking, "How do I improve my life?" and begins asking, "What is currently interfering with improvement?" This question changes everything, because once interference is removed, progress does not need encouragement. Stoicism prepared the mind for this moment. It trained judgment to separate signal from noise, necessity from preference, control from illusion. Extreme minimalism prepared the environment. It stripped away excess inputs, false urgency, performative ambition. Kaizen then reveals the truth most people never see. Progress is not something you chase. It is something you stop blocking. This is the moment when effort collapses, not because discipline increases, but because resistance disappears. Actions no longer feel heavy. Decisions no longer feel dramatic. Days no longer feel fragmented. Life begins to move in one direction, without internal negotiation. This is why Kaizen Stoics rarely speak about balance. Balance implies constant correction. What they experience is alignment. When alignment is present, even small actions land with disproportionate force. A single adjustment compounds for months. A quiet habit reshapes identity. A reduced input sharpens every output. Extreme minimalism makes this visible. When there is less to manage, there is more capacity to refine. And refinement, not intensity, is where mastery is born. Stoicism called this living according to nature. Not nature as scenery, but nature as order. Kaizen provides the method. Extreme Minimalism provides the conditions. Together, they produce a life where progress feels natural and struggle feels unnecessary. This is not a dramatic transformation. It is something far more dangerous to old patterns. It is sustainable clarity. And once clarity stabilizes, you don't need to push forward. You simply continue. Kaizen Stoicism is not a strategy for doing more. It is a discipline for needing less force to move forward. Stoicism sharpens judgment. It teaches the mind to distinguish between what matters and what merely demands attention. Kaizen ensures that progress remains gentle, repeatable, and stable across time. Extreme minimalism removes the environmental noise that prevents both from working. Together, they form a system where improvement no longer depends on mood, energy, or motivation. The result is not speed. It is continuity. Days connect. Effort aligns. Small actions accumulate without resistance. This is why Kaizen Stoics rarely speak about goals. Goals end. Systems endure. When life is structured to reduce interference, clarity becomes the default state. Progress becomes quiet, and stress loses its grip. This is not a philosophy for dramatic change. It is for those who value stability over stimulation, depth over display, and control over chaos. If this way of thinking resonates, take a moment to reflect, not on what you should add next, but on what might be unnecessary in your current system. That single reduction is often the beginning of real progress. If you found value here, share your thoughts in the comments. Not opinions, observations. And if you want to explore how this philosophy translates into practical, everyday systems, the next video continues that path, quietly, deliberately, one refinement at a time.